Hope you guys have been having a great weekend. Welcome back. We've got a very odd situation going on here regarding the Genshin Impact VA, ex-Genshin Impact VA, Kaylee Mills, who's still working as Rappy in Nikkei, last I checked, and her Wikipedia article with one account named Sean Laraway. Obviously, that's also the name of a VA who's become a bit notorious throughout the entire Genshin situation for his constant defending of the Union and that sort of thing. So there's a person going by his name. Presumably, it's actually Sean Laraway himself, but I don't know for sure if it is. But on Wikipedia, there's like a Sean Laraway trying to make edits that seem to favor Kaylee Mills on Wikipedia, and there's been like this whole edit war going back and forth. So that's going to be like what we're taking a look at in this video. That's an overview of this very bizarre situation. Now, let's get into the actual details. As I got this tag from Fire Sparkle, thank you for the tag, it says @HeroHey and Paperbag Boy. Shouts out to Paperbag Boy. The tweet reading, look at this. This SAG just, the SAG just doesn't give up now, do they? But on the bright side, Wikipedia's editors told him to screw off due to conflict of interest. You can't edit articles if you are involved with the entities you do edits on, whoop-de-doo. Then saying it gets even better and even more. Paperbag Boy saying, does that mean Sean Laraway tried to make the edit? Let's see what the response is here. Their trusted source is Vice. If Vice said so, it's true. We'll get to that. But like for Paperbag Boy's question here, oh my gosh, why am I all zoomed up on my screen? What the frick? For Paperbag Boy's question, I'm just going to say as a disclaimer here as well, I'm not definitively saying that the Sean Laraway on Wikipedia is the Sean Laraway who's a VA. This seems like something that VA would do, but of course I don't know for sure. That's who's running the account on Wikipedia. That's going by the same name. So as a disclaimer, don't know for sure. Seems likely, but I don't know for sure. Make of it what you will. Then I also got this tweet from Pedro. Thank you for the tag. Here, hey, have you noticed that Kaylee Mills Wikipedia no longer mentions the strike controversy? And the one who started the movement to delete it was Sean Laraway. There was discussion about removing it. That takes us to the Wikipedia entry for Kaylee Mills. This is the page specifically for, as you can see at the very top here, revision history. And don't worry, we're not going to read all this stuff, text everywhere here. The point of this is simply that you can see there's been this recurring, as mentioned, Wikipedia war going on here on Kaylee Mills' page. And you can see this stuff's been going on from like June 25th up until today, with the entry getting stuff added and then removed, and added and removed. And in particular for section titled Hoyoverse Strike. Hoyoverse Strike, SAG after controversy, goes on and on. If we go to Kaylee Mills' page right now, though, as of recording, you can see on the left-hand side, there is no section for SAG after controversy or anything like that. What we have is simply biography, personal life, and then the filmography stuff here. And that's really it. However, check this out. The tweet that Fire Sparkle tagged me to did include a screenshot. And in this screenshot, we can actually see that at the point in time when Fire Sparkle took this screenshot, Kaylee Mills Wikipedia did apparently have the section SAG after controversy. Now, as mentioned, that section as of recording is entirely gone, but here's an example of the edit war that was occurring. We can see on the left-hand side of the screenshot, that revision area says revision as of 0035 25th June 2025 by an account called Sean Laraway, section SAG after controversy, and the highlighted area reading, following Takanashi's self-announcement, Mills, along with several other voice actors, including Karina Becker, rightfully criticized him for scabbing. In comparison, on the right-hand side, a revision as of 0037, 25th June 2025 by an account named Uriel Acosta reads, following Takanashi's self-announcement, Mills, along with several other voice actors, including Karina Becker, heavily criticized him for replacing Pat Node. Now, obviously, if we had to pick between one of these two, that's more objective fact, more about what happened and less opinionated and biased, it would be the one on the right. Framing what happened as rightfully criticizing him for scabbing is very much an opinion, and very much the sort of opinion you might expect from Sean Laraway or any other VA in that clique, any other SAG after bootlicker to have. But it doesn't end there. We can see another change on the left-hand side. The text there at the bottom read, Takanashi, who was born in Texas, was aware of the strike, with Mills writing that Takanashi's tweet was diabolical and that he should have taken the role. It gets cut off there. Maybe also should is a typo for like who's trying to present that. Like clearly they meant should not have taken the role in that context. But let's let's focus on like the born in Texas thing, because on the right hand side it says, despite Takanashi, who was based in Japan, being unaware of the strike at that time, with Mills writing that Takanashi's tweet was diabolical and that he should, and it gets cut off. So let's compare this one more time. The one on the left is trying to say that he was born in Texas and he is aware of the strike. The one on the right is saying that he is based in Japan and unaware of the strike. Now, according to what we do know, yes, it does seem, to my understanding, yeah, he was born in Texas, but he is currently working in Japan. Jacob Takanashi in his statement said that he is unaware of the strike, according to my recollection, and I think maybe he was being based in Japan as part of the reason for being unaware of the strike. So it's very bizarre that the framing on the left by the Sean Larway account was trying to mention that he was born in Texas and also saying that he was aware of the strike when Jacob Takanashi himself claims otherwise. Now, who knows if that's true or not by Jacob Takanashi, but at the very least, we certainly know that you can't definitively put that he was aware of the strike in this article when there's no definitive proof that he did, and he himself is claiming otherwise. On the right-hand side is a more reasonable presentation, just essentially saying what Jacob Takanashi said in his statement, which was, again, based in Japan and being unaware of the strike at the time. Now, you could argue that neither thing regarding like being born in Texas or based in Japan is relevant to a section on Kaylee Mills' Wikipedia page about the SAG-AFTRA controversy. However, again, given that Jacob's statement did reference being based in Japan and therefore being unaware of the strike, that certainly has more relevancy than the whole like, oh, he was born in Texas thing. And again, the aware of the strike is also misleading at best and an outright lie at worst. Furthermore, this is an important thing to take note of because throughout this entire situation with Jacob Takanashi, the clique of VAs bootlicking for SAG-AFTRA have constantly tried to disparage Jacob Takanashi with this rhetoric. Specifically, they say things like, oh, he's not a real Japanese person. He was born in Texas. So seeing that same rhetoric interjected here by an account, by a Sean Larway account is not surprising at all. And that takes us over here. Wikipedia has a section that lets people talk about things that are occurring on a specific page. So you wouldn't find this on Kaylee Mills' page itself, but there is a talk section for Kaylee Mills' page, and that's where this talk, quote unquote, is occurring. Specifically this section titled Edit Warring on SAG-AFTRA Strike and Conflict of Interest. Now it's a little bit hard to follow along with this because I believe the person making the comment is going to be mentioned at the very end here. So for example, this whole comment, oh my gosh, let me scroll up. There you go. Okay. So for example, this whole comment seems to be left by this user lullabying, if I'm understanding this properly. So it's like the invert of a typical post you might see on social media where the name comes first and then the message. So keep that in mind as we read. It's going to be the message first and then the name. But I'll read it that way too to help it make more sense. I'm also going to remove myself so we can get more of the text on screen here, make it easier for people to read and follow along. And so it begins with this user lullabying saying, I'm a bit concerned about the inclusion of Mills' involvement in the SAG-AFTRA strike as I can see it turning into an edit war. I'm also concerned about Sean Larway misrepresenting the sources by rewriting information skewing towards a particular point of view, which brings up issues about conflict of interest. I have undone Sean Larway's edits as a result. Sean Larway account responds and says, it's not a conflict of interest because I do not know any of the individuals personally. The fact I put into the article were taken straight from the words of voice actors, whereas your article is filled with misinformation from anti-union astroturfing. Everything I put in was correct. Yeah, so obviously even just from the few examples we went over, there was clear bias being shown. For example, saying rightfully criticized him for being a scab. That is very much an opinion. And also saying taken straight from the words of voice actors, that doesn't really mean anything without specific context to what is being referred to. For example, someone from this clique of people could say something that's a false accusation about Jacob Takanashi hypothetically, and based on Sean Larway saying, oh, it was taken straight from the words of the voice actors, he could then run with that false accusation and put it in there and use the same argument for it. Oh, a voice actor said it, it was taken right from their words. That doesn't mean it's true, and it doesn't mean it should be put in the article. Again, that's a hypothetical, but you get my point about how that argument he's making is not a good one. But let's continue. Lullabying responds and says, what was written by you were not what the listed sources say. Oh gosh. It's important not to misrepresent the articles listed as sources. If you can find reliable sources discussing what the voice actors say, feel free to share them. However, because you are a voice actor with possible professional ties to the United States voice acting industry, I will say there is a conflict of interest, as there can be bias. What's this? Is this... I guess this is Sean Larway. Yeah, the next two paragraphs here. Sorry, it's like weird format, as you can see. But okay, I think this is the Sean Larway account for this next section entirely. It says, Bud, the person or people who wrote the original article, have a clear bias against Kaylee and Karina. I have an entire catalog of sources here. And that's absolutely hilarious because his great source is literally a subreddit variant of Gaming Circle Jerk. One of the most notoriously like terrible subreddits out there, which is saying a lot because there's a lot of terrible subreddits. And this particular post that he's sourcing is literally a Redditor compiling posts from like the VA click on Blue Sky, where they desperately try and present their misinformation, their very biased misinformation, as objective fact, which it is certainly not. For example, look how hilarious this is. Part of that Reddit post reads, "This VA goes over how a certain drama video is full of errors." And it links to Sean Larway's post on Blue Sky, where he's all mad at Mujan's video and does a terrible job of actually disproving anything in that video, by the way. Now returning to Sean Larway on Wikipedia and this conversation. We left off where he said, "I have no professional ties to the industry of me typing this out. The Genshin Impact quote-unquote fans are the ones with the bias. They have spouted anti-union astroturfing." Yeah, you said the same thing just a second ago. "Jacob knew just because he lived in Japan doesn't mean he is not a scab." You don't know what he knows or not with the information we have. Just like I talked about earlier regarding the rhetoric these VAs attempt to use about Jacob being from the US but living in Japan, we see the same thing going on once again right here. And so then he says, "I am a voice actor, which means unlike Redditors, I actually have experience and I'm a trusted source." So hold on a second. This guy sourced Reddit a second ago. He said, "I have an entire catalog of sources here." And that was a post on Reddit. But now he's saying, unlike Redditors, I actually have experience and I'm a trusted source. Oh my gosh, bro. You're the one sourcing Redditors. What the frick? Furthermore, how are you a trusted source? You seem extremely untrustworthy, but okay, bro. "The professional voice actors have debunked everything claimed in the article. It is clearly biased in favor of Jacob and against Kaylee or Karina." Look, to be fair, I don't know what it said originally. Maybe it was biased in favor of Jacob. But clearly, from what I've seen, the Sean Larway account was definitely trying to make the article, that being the Wikipedia page about Kaylee Mills, biased in defense of Kaylee and the union. And professional VAs debunking everything, yeah, X to doubt on that too. Like, these VAs have tried debunking stuff throughout the last number of months, and pretty much every time it just makes them look worse and like a bunch of liars. And so then we get this other account, Piamon, responding and saying, responding to where, first this account, Juju376, says, "We can't do," or then the Piamon account says, responding to where Sean Larway posted, "Jacob knew just because he lived in Japan doesn't mean he's not a scab. Dude, trust me is not a trusted source. Please don't spread misinformation, especially if you have no intention of elaborating it." Then, responding to where Sean had said, "The professional voice actors have debunked everything claimed in the article." Piamon saying, "Who are these professional voice actors you're talking about? Every single one of you have different answers to the same question. Even Joe ZJ and some VAs would agree that Jacob is not a scab." Juju376 then saying, "Not only is Do Trust Me not a trusted source, but Wikipedia also doesn't allow original research." Then we get a bunch of links here. This is, again, from Sean Larway, I guess. "Just because someone lives in a different country doesn't mean that stealing a striking worker's job isn't scabbing. Lots of companies during the strike would try to outsource striking jobs overseas." Links to some, like, random websites here. "If you're going to use tweets for this, then also use Blue Sky from real actors, not even in Genshin debunking this. The actors went on strike for AI protections, but they wanted different solutions. Some union and some non-union. K." I love how he's like typoing above and now he's typoing Kaylee's name. "Would have come back if Hoyo would have just signed the Nava writer." Okay, first of all, people are questioning how this guy seems to have like omniscientific knowledge of what Jacob knows or doesn't know. And he doesn't acknowledge that. Instead, he's just responding about scabbing or not. That's not the point of contention here, though. This is like a completely this is like misdirection. But to be quite frank, in my opinion, I don't think he's intentionally misdirecting here. I think this guy's just highly incompetent, and he just can't argue like properly at all. So that's just my opinion. How much more of this is there, man? This is dealing with these VAs is funny, but it's kind of painful because like you have to actually like damage your brain to try to understand their logic. For any Kengan fans out there, it's like when Shen Wulong was fighting Gao Mukaku and he had to like nerf himself just to try and have like a better fight. I have to like nerf myself to try and understand these VAs. So Paimon says, what's strike? Where's your source that says that Genshin was a struck project? Where's the official announcement that Hoyo was struck? None? See, you're the one who keeps spreading misinformation. It's just collective and unorganized work refusal. Sean Laraway responds and says, literally from Vice calling it a strike. It's not a SAG strike. It's a non-union strike, an individual strike. Paimon says, are you telling me that... hold up. Says, recast announcement end of March 2025. Vice article, June 13, 2025. Are you telling me that Jacob is a time traveler? That are you talking about? Or no, Sean Laraway then says, that are you talking about? If Vice makes an article calling it a strike, then you should call it a strike. Jacob wasn't even mentioned in the Vice article. I don't know if Paimon's going to point it out, but I will. Vice calling it a strike doesn't mean anything. Some random journalist at Vice saying something doesn't matter. Like, what is this guy trying to get at? If Vice said this, it must be true. I just blindly believe everything that Vice says. Okay, bro. Great. Good for you. And then we got Paimon saying, people started calling Jacob a scab long before that Vice article, though. Sean Laraway says, if a Vice article is out now calling it a strike, then it should be updated / referred to it now as a strike. What the frick is this guy talking about? You clearly have a bias. You've been moving the goalpost, and your username is clearly a reference to Paimon, the Genshin Impact character. Oh my gosh, dude. He did like the meme where it's like that hit character from, or like that character from hit game Genshin Impact or whatever. He like unironically just did that. If I have a conflict of interest, then so do you. Look, again, maybe this other person's biased, but like if we're going to argue who has a bigger conflict of interest here, surely it's the one who's trying to act like he's a professional VA and has been bootlicking for the union and this clique for months now, if not longer, maybe. Now what do we got here? Paimon says, literally my first post in this thread, responding to where Sean had said, Jacob knew just because he lived in Japan doesn't mean he's not a scab. Citation needed. What goalpost has been moved? Also, conflict of interest have nothing to do with random people picking up a random username. Yeah, what was that all about too? I was talking about the meme thing because it was funny, but that's also a good point. Like, what the frick? Your name is referencing Paimon. You must have a conflict of interest. Like, what? What the frick? And we got a giant post here from Sean Laraway. Sure, random username. That happens to be a reference to the Genshin character Paimon, whose VA you brought up. I literally debunked your claim, yet you kept moving the goalpost. Again, my real source says that workers in other countries taking jobs from striking workers is still scabbing. The Local. Links to some website, The Local. And considering the original article used Twitter, it conveniently left out posts that identified him as a white man from Texas who, oh my gosh, dude, who followed voice actors on social media and was alleged to have been warned by voice actors before taking the role. So that's interesting. According to Sean Laraway here, allegedly other VAs warned Jacob not to take the role. He's trying to say this in a way that, like, it's supposed to make Jacob look bad. It doesn't. It makes y'all look bad. Like, you're trying to threaten the dude. Let's continue. So making an article that was clearly biased for Jacob is factually incorrect, especially when you Jacob defenders refuse to accept any new piece of information that proves your claims wrong. Paimon says, at this point, we were just arguing about personal identity and speculation. Then this user Lullaby says, so far there is nothing reported on whether Takanashi knew about the strike, and it's just the assumption of he said, she said. Let's leave that out of the conversation. Also, at Sean Laraway, conflict of interest on Wikipedia means that people who have personal / professional connections to people, companies, and or general industry should not edit Wikipedia articles directly and must disclose their connections. They must put the template WP disclose on their user page to do so. Paimon says, currently the only confirmation that is not an assumption was from voice actor Nathan Noakes. Jacob was not aware of the strike, linking to where Nathan said that. That's right. I think that's what happened. Yeah, I think Nathan said that he spoke to Jacob, and Jacob claimed he didn't know about the strike. Sean Laraway then says, Nathan alleges that. It cannot be used as confirmation. A lot of voice actors who knew Jacob and worked with him debunked this. The same argument would apply there, though. If you're saying, like, Nathan doesn't know that for sure and he's alleging it, the same would apply to the argument he's trying to make about VAs alleging that Jacob did know. Also, Nathan isn't alleging that Jacob didn't know. He's saying Jacob told him that he didn't know. If you want to argue that it's a lie, that's one thing. But the point I'm making is that Sean isn't even understanding the concept of allege properly here. This whole argument doesn't make sense. Finally, Sean adds this comment where he seems like very mad. He says, "Oh, and by the way, just because the public at large didn't know about a strike doesn't mean it still isn't a strike. Just because there is no announcement doesn't invalidate a strike from existing. Jacob Takanashi is a scab." And so after that, we have what seems to be a moderator going by Link20XX here, and reprimanding Paimon as well as Sean Laraway, but especially Sean Laraway here for calling Jacob a scab, saying it's a personal attack. And it's really funny to me how often this clique of VAs try to use that word, scab, as some like ultimate gotcha. They seem to think that calling someone a scab means they can treat that person terribly and say whatever they want about them. What's hilarious about this is the clique is so unlikable that by far the majority of people don't even care if Jacob is a scab or not. And they view the VAs and their clique as the ones by far in the wrong. But anyways, the rest of the moderation post there seems to discuss why the entire SAG-AFTRA controversy page ultimately ended up getting removed from Kaylee Mills' Wikipedia page, and I'll leave this video here. So thank you for tuning in. I know this was a lot of reading. I hope you enjoyed this segment though and found it interesting, because that was a lot of craziness. And like, we've talked about Sean Laraway before, but somehow this dude continues to get more and more unhinged. And it's really interesting because the official SAG-AFTRA video game strike is done, and the union, as well as the pro-SAG VAs, have tried to act like this is all a massive dub for them. But then you take a look at their socials, and they seem more unhappy than ever, lashing out at people and just seeming overall miserable. Let me know what you think about all this stuff in the comments. And thank you so much for tuning in. Consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed my coverage. Appreciate you. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next one.